Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for the 26th of November. All right, welcome back after the Thanksgiving break. Hopefully everyone's been refreshed. Now, as we come into trading on Monday, you'll see that Euro had a bit of a little fall out of bed on Friday, a bit of weaker German numbers, but also some concerns still around the Italian budget issue with the EU, and that's sort of just weighing on the Euro somewhat, but those German numbers were a little bit weaker once again. Just enough to push it over the edge, but hasn't really gone too far. Sterling, Brexit, positive news, once again sends Sterling up 150 points, and that's slowly dissipated over the course of Friday and into today's trading. Dollar yen just sitting on the sidelines, not doing much at all. And the Aussie, a good example of a pair that's been completely diffused. We had that sort of big move to the top side, then reaction down. Now it's just banging away sideways, waiting for some Aussie or US data to kick it along. Whereas the Kiwi was a little bit different. It's been in a solid sort of uptrend, and we have seen some stop loss orders triggered under 68 the figure. And this morning we had weaker retail sales volume numbers out of New Zealand. Sort of kicked it down about 20 points, but it is just trading sideways at this point, waiting further direction. Now, dollar CAD, one of the odd ones out now. We had really strong inflation numbers out of Canada on Friday, one of the only major releases. But this is what happens when you've got two major components pulling apart. So oil falling under $50 a barrel, and that sort of pushes dollar CAD up. And then you've got the strong CAD numbers pushing dollar CAD down. So this is a real tricky situation, especially with thin liquidity with Thanksgiving. You end up with some really crazy price action. And funnily enough, it's exactly where it was before the numbers came out. So just be aware, dollar CAD isn't exactly an easy trade at this point. Now, that's the general major pairs. Now, one good thing to do, and this is the way I've just made a couple of tweaks here to my Reuters pages. I've got the US dollar pairs here lined up. Now, generally what I want to see is some uniformity across the dollar pairs. Now, the dollar index, okay, it's against the basket. Euro and sterling making up about 70% of it. So when euro comes off, the dollar index goes up. But as you can see across the board here, dollar yen, dollar Swiss a fraction higher, and dollar CAD sideways as well. That US dollar move is more, and this is where you can really quantify it, because euro fell, not because the dollar rallied. Okay, it hasn't really gone anywhere against any of the other major pairs. And then if you come back across, I'll just bring you over to the main page to give you a look at what the equity markets are doing. Equities slightly down, okay, from where we were on Friday, okay, another sort of weekday. Then you come back into that, so that's going to filter through into the Asian equities, and I would expect that to go into the European equities there as well. We'll see how that pans out. Now, weaker equities, they're buying US dollars as a bit of a safe haven. That's what the media outlets are trying to tell us anyway. So that's sort of leading to that slight US dollar index move to the top side. The offshore yuan, dollar yuan, a bit of a gap there in the market. It's a good example of why you don't have positions over the weekend. It's pretty much trading where it was on Friday, but it is just trading in a big 200-point range at the moment. So no fresh news out of Trump or China with regards to these tariffs. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out. We're waiting for Chinese numbers to roll over and really show us the impact that these numbers are having, because then we can get a clear example of, or a good trade, I should say, on the US dollar yuan, buying US dollars against that. Now, just to give you a look at the news out there, the Ukrainians and the Russians are at it. The Russians have started firing on 3 Ukrainian ships, so that's going to create some issues up in Northern Europe. We'll have to see how that one plays out. But the major news is the EU agrees the best possible deal for Brexit, urges Britons to keep Theresa May in power. So we'll see how that plays out. But Brexit continues to fly in and fly out. The dollar, if you look reading Reuters, they'll tell you that the dollar's higher on a weaker oil. That's one component. I think mainly because of the weaker euro is the main reason. And dollar CAD pulled and pushed from all over the place. Local fundamentals really driving it a CAD higher, but then oil falling, driving it lower. So that's why dollar CAD isn't really moving anywhere. All right, so just coming back to the MyFX Trading Hub now, you want to sort of piece together where the major activity is coming from and what to look at. Now, I've made a couple of changes here, and I'll just run you through those. Now, just as far as trading conditions, they're not bad, but just be aware Brexit is still unconfirmed and still going to create random chaotic moves for sterling crosses, and the US dollar index. So just be aware of that. Upcoming events today, German IFO business numbers. Now, we had those weaker German and Eurozone numbers on Friday. This is probably a really good opportunity to have a bit of a bow peep into the European or German economy. If these numbers are weak, we could have a nice little trade here on Euro to the downside after these numbers. Now, that's where I'll be looking at. And if you go down through the week of events, we've got loads of high impacting, really directional releases coming out. The FOMC minutes, probably the main part to be keeping an eye on there. And the Eurozone numbers at the end of the week. I've even got Italian monthly employment numbers, because this is going to become a real raw nerve. Italy. Now, if this doesn't, like their budget issues are still being raised as a concern. That's one of the reasons why Euro drifted lower. Now, anything to do with Italy at the moment is important. If unemployment starts to rally, well, that's going to create issues with regards to them trying to get out of the EU. And that's what you want to be looking at, as well as obviously the inflation numbers that Draghi's been following for some months. So that's where the action is later in the week. But just looking straight at the moment at the major currency pair outlook, right, we've got some only two major shifts from last week. Right, Thanksgiving came and went, pretty quiet trading until Friday, and that's when the euro sort of just banged down through sort of 114 the figure, broke that technical support. A little bit of concerns about Italy, weak German numbers, slightly weaker Eurozone numbers, and there it goes. And that's enough to push the US dollar into a mildly bullish framework. And that dollar move also works with that weaker equity market as well. But the rest of the major currency pairs, all pretty much trading sideways as far as I can tell. Now, just added one little component to the daily analysis summary. Now, just having a look here, I just want to give you, I've added the charts, so you can actually see a bit more about where I'm getting that mildly bullish scenario from. So these charts here, I've got the hourly, daily, and weekly charts. As you can see, the hourly chart here and the weekly both sort of moving to the sort of slightly to the top side. And overall, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That gives it that mildly sort of bullish framework. There's no change in the US sentiment at this stage or economic data. So technically, it's moving to the top side, and you would expect that to continue. Now, if we did have the fundamentals also coming together with either the US economic data or the Fed, then that would move this from being mildly bullish to bullish. And that's a much better trading opportunity. Now, also, and as the almost like its distant cousin, the euro, dollar goes up, euro goes down, and vice versa. In this case, the euro was moving lower, and that's I think the main reason why the dollar index is a little bit higher. But just having a look here, if you have a look at the hourly chart, once again, the hourlies, and you've got the weekly chart there, both pointing down. The daily charts, to me, still pretty much trading sideways at this point. So you've got two of the time frames mildly bearish. And for me, that's enough to give that euro a mildly bearish sentiment. All right, so just have a look at those through those different currency pairs. And you can see those, you see at the top here, just click on the chart and you can go through to that analysis. All right, and that's pretty much where we are, guys. It's a pretty quiet start to the Monday. The markets will take a little bit of time to reconnect after the Thanksgiving sort of weekend. And as I said, probably keep an eye on euro as we go forward, especially through Monday, because we do have those German IFO numbers, and it's the only pair that has really clear, somewhat clear direction at this point. And that's pretty much it. Get yourself prepared. Have a good scroll down through the fundamental releases coming out this week. There's loads of big momentum drivers there as we go forward as well. All right, guys, that's it from me. Have a good trade day, and I'll see you in the live trade zone. Cheerio.